Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This reports for the 26th of August. Well, as we talked about, even with the magenta riding above, we saw a significant move of this MBI white and actually is now piercing the red, which could generate a continuation of weakness. Still hasn't crossed above magenta or anything, and nor are you seeing magenta fade, but the fade here at this particular point, right at about a little over 35 right now, it's sitting at 38, and with yellow right about 35. Any of those turning around on, well, in this case, you're going to take more than a pullback, just the ABM yellow, because it's rising so much, but more likely the ABM magenta. We can get a value on that right around 42.14 range. I think at that point, you could definitely be looking at a serious weakness configuration. Of course, it's got to tie in with green, DOC falling, and the cyan shorts rising enough to create the counter move. At this particular point, you're still within bullish range. So I'm just giving the counterpoint to what would happen if flip. Nothing's changed from that positive element at this particular stage. And we'll see the 50K chart as well as the 5K earlier. From an NQ standpoint, clearly showing the weakness that potentially, if developed in the S&P, would be much more of a concern, because now you can see they both have rolled over, and potentially you're going to look at the white NBI take over magenta, which would definitely be a weakness case, and you're seeing here that collapse, potentially forming that spider. That's where you get that peak of the green, pops back below, and then you get the cyan breaking above it. And at the same time, if you end up with that happening as well as the steel here dropping below cyan, you're going to have both configurations of weakness. And then I would expect a bit more of an extreme move from the NASDAQ. So the potentials are there. It's just a matter of, will it happen before we get to the end of the month, the new money coming in? Will that be the catalyst to give them opportunity to roll over? I think those exist, and you have to just be prepared for that probability that is at play. And from a gold standpoint here, a little bit of softness within this, but still going to continue to rise in general. There's no question that right now we're just seeing that flux back and forth because of the supply disruption and the inconsistency of openings in the U.S. From state to state is limiting the economic growth, which is forcing the Fed to continue its easing policy. Not that it was ever going to change anyway, but the degree that it does it is really all the market is looking at these days. And from a euro standpoint, of course, the Fed would like to see this thing get back into that 119, 121 range, but market forces, people are looking for any kind of yield, are still going to be moving to the U.S. because the eurozone is still a disaster as far as any growth prospects. And from a Bitcoin standpoint, we saw a couple of series of here where the white MBIs poked out above, and we didn't see any green markers moving above. It happened a brief moment. We had this nice spike of white. We ended up making the new low. And it stayed kind of above, back and forth here. We had the green going above, and then when finally we had the DOC spread right at about here before that last little peak move. And then once we had the breakdown of magenta, and it just accelerated all the way back to the 0 point, and it could break even lower given this. Now, none of this is a surprise because we were always looking for these positive extremes to fill. First, the secondary one right here, and the full one, which was 47,115, filling in this post-market thing. So all things being equal, it did exactly as we talked about, what was that, 3 or 4 days ago. So nice when that happens, does it so perfectly. Modest day volume-wise, I would expect that we're going to start to see that change and pick up a little bit. We're already seeing more activity here in the post-market than we did at the early part of yesterday. What was interesting is in some of these readings, this is something I'm going to be looking at the code for going into September. Couple of these situations where we get the white MBI moves below red, as well as then magenta turning around, and particularly when it moves back above yellow. Marked at a couple of spots like right here where it's clearly defined, as well as you had orange in this case dipping below. Definitely, those are much more positive aspects than I would expect color change, and particularly in this one where green has moved completely over DOC cyan, and we know that that's a conversion, and that led to the peak. Now, in all of that action doing so, we really didn't have any positive extremes. The only thing that we had close to it was the dip below the red line, and that was back over the previous day, and that had already been filled. So the fact that this started filling before the day's out and then completely took out the lows, well, pretty close to it, took out the majority of them, going all the way back through here. Didn't quite make the full lows, but that was pre-market. For the regular market session, it did and filled them back. And as soon as it did, we get a little bit of a bounce back, but I would suspect that as soon as we get a little bit of a fade right here, we're going to be coming back down. This was a lot of time of white MBI over, but right now you have the green DOC, and so if that spider is where you end up with the green moving back below, much like we're talking about from the daily, I think you'll see that fill back and retrace. So there you have it, the long and the short of it for now. As always, though, if anything relevant, I will put the charts up. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.